We've seen many examples of cases where camera footage has been central in solving a case. But today we see a case where camera footage is indeed found, and just when it seems to have helped hone in on a suspect, we learn that that answer isn't as obvious as perhaps it seemed. This case is, of course, tragic, and as a trigger warning, it involves the murder of a child. But it also led to the powers that be having to take a damned hard look at some aspects of the law that had previously allowed a great many predators to be free to do their dastardly dealings without being hampered by any restrictions. This is the harrowing case of Carlie Brucia, and this is Murder of Crows. Isn't it? Yes, it is. You know it. You know it, young man.
You say that you're ready, but you won't like it. You say that you're ready, but you won't like it. Silence all the crows, lining up in little rows. A sudden chill surrounds me. Silence all the crows, see come out and say you're wrong. A sudden chill.
Carlie Jane Brucia was born on March the 16th, 1992. By 1993, her mother and father had divorced, with Brucia largely living in Sarasota with her mother, but visiting her Long Island family during the summer and winter school breaks. Brucia was living with her mother, Susan Chopin, and her stepfather in Sarasota. In 2004, she was a perfectly normal 11-year-old girl who was in the 6th grade at McIntosh Middle School. On the 1st of February 2004, she had spent the previous night having a sleepover and stayed through the next morning and afternoon at her friend's home. But it was a very special day across America, because Superbowl 38 was on that evening. And the game was, as usual, a big deal for many people in the US and indeed beyond. Though these days Superbowl 38 is probably most remembered for Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake's Nipplegate incident during the halftime show. But for the record, the New England Patriots beat the Carolina Panthers 32-29. Probably means something to some people. Back in our story, that hadn't happened yet, and much of the US was keenly anticipating the big game. Carlie decided that she wanted to watch the game with her family, so left her friend's home at about 6 p.m. to make the short walk back to the family home. By 6:30, the family were concerned that she had not yet arrived home. And so they decided, because it was so out of character for the young girl, as well as going out searching themselves, they reported Carlie as missing to the police.
911, what's the location of the emergency?
My daughter is missing.
What's your address, ma'am?
She's gone. We can't find her anywhere. I've called all her friends.
How old is she?
11.
Okay, what's her name, ma'am?
Carlie, C-A-R-L-I-E.
And last name?
Brucia, B-R-U-C-I-A.
Now at this point, I've got a multiple choice question for you. Did the police A, pull out all the stops and swamp the route and local area with officers? Did they B, call the A-team? Or C, say meh, and after a courtesy visit to the home, list her as a runaway in local and national law enforcement databases? Well, thank you for playing, but it was largely a rhetorical question, because that night it was only really family that were looking for Carlie. Though the next morning, in fairness, law enforcement did rather jump back in, and action was quite swift, with bloodhounds being brought in along Carlie's likely route. But little of note was found. The family were, naturally enough, very upset. But they were also angry with themselves, as they rarely let Carlie walk places on her own, instead preferring to give her lifts whenever she needed to go anywhere. But on this particular occasion, Carlie's stepdad, Steve Kanzler, was driving his son somewhere at the time, and only missed the chance to go to pick up Carlie by a couple of minutes. Rather than waiting, Carlie set out for home, but she never arrived. The major shift in the case came quite early in the investigation, as at around midday, the day after Carlie was reported missing, the owner of a local car wash on Carlie's likely route decided to check his surveillance footage to see if he could see any sign of the young girl on her way home, since the car wash was in very close proximity to where she would most likely have walked. But he saw far more than just a sign of the young girl. Far, far more, and it was deeply disturbing. Carlie could be seen passing by the car wash before she was approached by a stocky man who then appears to lead her away. When you remember that she was not seen after this, the footage becomes even more unsettling. As soon as police got this footage, they looked into family, friends and associates of Carlie, and also of the friend that she had spent the previous night with. And it really didn't take very long at all to find a likely suspect among that particular pool of people. A friend of Carlie's friend's mother seemed to have the same look and build as the suspect in the footage, and he was quickly brought in for questioning.
Saturday?
Yes.
Anything?
Sunday morning, I woke up. I don't know, nothing happened Saturday night. Okay. You know, they were giddy all night long. You know, I was sleeping in the other room. So I woke up Sunday morning, like I normally do, get up, get ready for work.
So if you didn't see her at any point after
During the day?
during the day, or if you went to work,
Absolutely not.
is that what you wore to work Sunday, or did you?
No, actually, I had a Superbowl shirt on yesterday. A great shirt.
They showed him a photograph of Carlie with the man in the car wash.
Is that?
I have the slightest idea, so definitely not me. It does look like me, doesn't it, though?
Yeah, it kind of looks like you. That's why we're talking to you.
Wow. Yeah, that definitely would not be me there. To be honest.
The deputies that you spoke to that night think that that's you.
Okay, it's not me. Blow it up. Do what you got to do. You verify my time, where I was. You know, I'm more than glad to work with you guys and anything. Believe me, there is no way. I mean, that was me. Honest to God, no way at all. I would never put anybody through that. No way.
How do we get past that, though? That's
Verifying where I was at 6:21.
There was no evidence to hold the man, so he was quite soon released. And at 5 p.m, police issued an Amber Alert for Carlie. It seems they didn't think she was a runaway after all. Her status in local and national databases was changed from runaway to abducted. Later that night, the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children produced more than 16,000 posters that would be distributed within a 90-mile radius of the location of her abduction. So the word was very quickly getting out about this missing child. In a seemingly unconnected event, the next day, police found a hypodermic needle and cocaine in the car of convicted felon Joseph Smith. He was booked into the Sarasota County Jail on a probation violation charge stemming from a 2003 drug conviction. He was not linked to Carlie's abduction, nor was he mentioned when the police made a public appeal for information at 2 p.m. on the 3rd of February 2004. A further press conference occurred that evening where Carlie's mother made an emotional plea for her return. By the next morning, the police have been able to enhance the surveillance video, and a name tag on the abductor's shirt can't be made out clearly, but they confirm that it is a short name of only 2 or 3 letters. That afternoon, police confirmed they are looking into around 400 leads generated by the press conferences, including the names of people that callers felt looked like the man in the video. Forensic teams also go to Carlie's friend's home to collect samples from where she had the sleepover the night before she went missing. Following some suggestions from the public, Joseph Smith was then being considered a suspect in Carlie's disappearance. With him still in jail for violating probation, the police forensically searched his car and his home at 3452 24th Parkway in Sarasota. Smith requested an attorney at this point, and he was allocated a public defender, and he refused to answer any questions. Joseph Smith's brother John was then shown the CCTV footage, and he agreed to help the FBI to get a confession from him, with John warning them, if it's him, then you won't get it out of him. But on February the 5th, Smith called his brother John, who was then able to take FBI agents and a local officer to the Central Church of Christ and directed them to a nearby field, which was about 2.8 miles from the site of Brucia's abduction. And so in the early hours of the 5th of February, a heartbreaking discovery was made. And I need to offer another trigger warning regarding violence against children here. Carlie Brucia's body was found behind the Central Church of Christ at 6221 Proctor Road, not far from the car wash where she was abducted. Carlie was found naked from the waist down, apart from a single sock. The Sarasota County Medical Examiner determined that Carlie Brucia had been strangled from behind and had been sexually assaulted, and abrasions on the side of her body indicated that she had been dragged to her final resting place. A semen sample found on her shirt matched Joseph Smith's DNA profile, and 2 of Brucia's head hairs were recovered from the yellow station wagon that Smith had borrowed and was using, with 7 fibers matching the red shirt that Brucia was wearing. Smith had disposed of Brucia's backpack and clothing in different trash bins. Taken together, the evidence was enough to charge Smith with Carlie's abduction and murder. The trial was heart-wrenching for the family of Carlie Brucia, but the evidence was compelling. Testimonies from the owner of the car wash and associates of Smith, who recognized him in the footage among many other witnesses, reinforced the powerful forensic evidence. FBI forensic examiner Jennifer Lutman displayed to the jury the tattered and stained red shirt that Carlie was wearing when her body was found. DNA evidence was presented, revealing that scientific evidence from a semen sample on the shirt matched Smith's profile, which was also mixed with Carlie's DNA. On November the 17th, 2005, Smith was found guilty on all counts for the abduction, rape, and murder of Carlie Brucia.
Tension in the courtroom. The judge warned everyone, scream or shout, and you're tossed out. And then came the verdict, broadcast across the country.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charges. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged.
Carlie Brucia's mother broke down crying and said, "Thank you, Jesus." Carlie's father simply nodded in approval. Joseph Smith, guilty on all counts. Bailiffs began preparing to take Smith away when the judge had to slow them down.
You need to just slow down for 1 second.
Smith will be back in court a week from Monday when the same jury returns to recommend a life or death sentence.
I will now be preparing to present further evidence on November the 28th, and will be arguing that a sentence of life in prison without possibility of parole is the best decision in this case.
I lost one of the most precious things to me in my life because of an animal, a disgusting, perverted animal.
The jury took 5 hours to pour over the evidence. The surveillance video, the letter that Smith sent to his brother, and the recorded conversations between Smith and his mother where he admitted killing her.
Joe, the best thing that you could do is just try and explain it was an accident.
Mom, it wasn't an accident, Mom.
I know that, Joe.
You don't think that I would do that on purpose, Mom?
No.
And if Carlie's mother could speak to Smith,
If I could speak to him, I'd like to know why he chose my daughter and why he had to kill her. And I'm sure she let him know that she was only 11 years old. How could he go through with it?
On the 14th of February 2006, Circuit Judge Andrew Owens listened to Joseph Smith read a tearful statement, because they're always sorry afterwards, aren't they? Smith apologized for the abduction, rape, and murder of the 11-year-old 2 years before he was giving this statement. Jurors recommended by a 10-2 vote that Smith be executed, and Judge Owens, under Florida law, was required to give great weight to the jury's recommendation. Smith was sentenced to death on March the 15th, 2006. In 2018, Smith's sentence was commuted to life, but was then reinstated as a death sentence in April of 2020.
Snatched off the streets and then murdered, her abduction caught on camera. And now the Sarasota case that shocked the entire country is back in the spotlight. Good evening, I'm Paul Agrone.
And I'm Laura Harris. 11-year-old Carlie Brucia's killer may escape the death penalty after a recent Florida Supreme Court decision.
Jake Peterson with reaction tonight from those close to the family.
I'll lend you for a little while, a child of mine, God said.
Don Betts.
To me, it's just a nice place to spend some of my time.
Thinks about Carlie Brucia more than most.
They found her was right on the edge of the, just about where this rock is.
He's the caretaker of her memorial at the Central Church of Christ. He comes here to reflect about Brucia, and he remembers his own granddaughter, who was murdered years ago.
When you lose someone, a family member, it's just nice to have a place to go sit and enjoy the solitude.
He's unsure what to think of the news that Brucia's killer, Joseph Smith, is going to be resentenced.
I have real mixed feelings about it. Another life taken doesn't bring Carlie back, but at the same time, like I say, justice should be carried out to whatever extent of the law.
Defense attorneys say the state is re-examining Smith's sentence because the Florida Supreme Court ruled that death penalty sentences had to be a unanimous decision by a jury. Smith's sentence was not unanimous. The state will now have a sentencing hearing for Smith.
We'll brave the bitter grief that comes and try to understand.
But for Betts, he's putting his trust in the justice system.
What your darker side says, tit for tat, I have real mixed feelings.
Reporting in Sarasota, Jake Peterson, ABC Action News.
In a case that captured national attention back in 2004, Joseph Smith kidnapped, raped, and killed 11-year-old Carlie Brucia. Smith was sentenced to death by a jury, but that decision was not unanimous, causing Smith to be resentenced to life in prison in 2018. Today, a spokesperson for State Attorney Ed Brodsky told 10 News his office will now file paperwork to reinstate Smith's death sentence. That's thanks to yesterday's decision by the state Supreme Court. And as our Phil Buck reports, death row issues are nothing new in the state of Florida.
When it comes to using the death penalty, Florida ranks second only to California for the number of inmates on death row. They include Mark Anthony Poole, who faces the death penalty over a 2001 case where he was convicted of first-degree murder, attempted murder, sexual battery, and armed robbery. Poole's case was the one Florida Supreme Court pointed to in ruling to allow death sentence recommendations from non-unanimous juries. Joseph Smith, who was sentenced to death in 2006 for killing 11-year-old Carlie Brucia, is another Florida inmate affected by the court's decision this week. When Smith's death sentence was reversed in 2018, Brucia's father told local papers Smith should die, calling the ruling an outrage. And while Smith now faces the prospect of heading back to death row, not everyone agrees with the Supreme Court's most recent decision.
It's more than disappointing, it's alarming, because this is Florida. We make more mistakes than any other death penalty state in the nation. And we've had 29 innocent people exonerated off our death row in Florida, far more than any other state.
Mark Elliott, Executive Director for Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, is right. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, Florida leads the nation in the number of death row inmates who have gone on to be proven innocent.
And the Death Penalty Information Center reports there are currently 2,639 inmates sitting in death row all across the United States.
Breaking news at 5 about one of the most notorious murder cases in recent Sarasota history. The state of Florida will seek the death penalty once again for Joseph Smith, the man who raped and killed 11-year-old Carlie Brucia in Sarasota 15 years ago. The Florida Supreme Court ordered a resentencing for Smith after a U.S. Supreme Court decision found Florida's death penalty process was unconstitutional. Smith will be in court this Friday for a motion hearing.
However, Smith died on death row of liver cancer on July the 26th, 2021 at the age of 55.
We have a news alert out of the state attorney's office for the 12th Judicial Circuit. The man convicted of kidnapping, sexual assaulting, and murdering Carlie Brucia back in 2004 has died in prison. The Attorney General notified State Attorney Ed Brodsky that Joseph Smith died. His office says the cause of death is unknown. Brucia was 11 years old when she was taken from a car wash in Sarasota.
The police also suspected Smith in the unsolved murder of Tara Riley, whose naked body was found in a retention pond behind a Walmart in Bradenton, Florida in 2000. His avoiding of the specifically imposed death sentence could have been seen as him escaping justice, but at least the cockwomble wouldn't be able to hurt anyone ever again. Carlie's Law was a bill introduced in the United States Congress by Representative Katherine Harris, with the support of Nick Lampson and Marsha Blackburn. And this was proposed in response to the case of Carlie Brucia. Smith was on probation at the time of Brucia's murder, having been released from state prison 13 months prior. But the amendment to existing law that this was proposing was intended to toughen parole rules for sex offenders and also notify non-custodial parents when there is criminal activity near their child's home. Partly for this reason, Joseph Brucia, the child's father, approved making the law in her name, although he conceded that the law would ironically not have applied to her specific case, since the charges for which Smith was on probation were not the sexual offences that the law would target. The bill failed to pass before the end of that particular parliamentary session, and it was suggested the bill may be reintroduced in 2005, but no further progress was made. However, it did force the powers that be to look harder at the rules around sex offenders, their supervision, and their access to public spaces and places. The spot where 11-year-old Carlie's body was found is now a memorial dedicated to her on the property of the Central Church of Christ in Sarasota. Named the Garden of Joy, it is a winding path with benches and plantings that lead to a pool and a headstone with Carlie's likeness on it. Volunteers maintain the garden and all of its landscaping, and local businesses donated materials and services to enhance the memorial. Flowers and cards were left at the base of the pool on Friday, November the 18th, 2005, after the guilty verdict was handed down to Joseph Smith. In addition, Carlie's secret garden was created at McIntosh Middle School in Sarasota in February of 2005. The large garden was donated to the school and was looked after by students. And this was, of course, in response to Carlie's abduction and murder. And that was the horrific case of the abduction and murder of 11-year-old Carlie Brucia. I don't want to mention the cockwomble again, so I won't. I will instead reflect on Carlie, whose life was snatched away before it really had the chance to begin. She is rightly remembered as an angel and a person of great value and huge potential. This video is, of course, dedicated to the memory of this sweet and kind little girl. And I truly hope that she really is an angel now. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. I'm Steve. This is Samson, who can't seem to settle and is being very, very fidgety. But before I lose control of him completely, I'm Steve. This is Samson. And we'll see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready.